Can you share your experience of launching your very first course?
And I also made sure that it was the best freaking program on the planet.
What are your thoughts about Udemy and using Udemy as a tool to get out there? And I want to add, it doesn't have to just be Udemy. There's so many platforms out there. Yeah.
Don't use any of them.
Yeah.
Don't
Great
use any
tip.
of them.
And I want to know why. Tell us why. Hey creators, it's your hosts, Natalie and Yasmin, and you're listening to the Course Creation Podcast. We'll talk business, building digital empires, and how to create passive income to start living a life you love. We are here to empower those of you who are thinking of starting your own course and to support those who are already well on their way to success. We've built a 7-figure media agency on unique storytelling, and now we're here to share our story in the course creation world, and more importantly, to hear yours. We are committed to creating a space for learning and a space for diversity and inclusion. Now let's get the show started. 3, 2, 1, action. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Course Creation Podcast. Today, we have our lovely guest, Ellie Swift, with us here today. She's a certified mindset and marketing coach, social media strategist, writer, and an international speaker. She has helped hundreds of coaches, creatives, and consultants through her one-on-one coaching to scale their business, launch online courses, and so much more. Also, using her signature Swift marketing method, Ellie helps service-based business owners connect with their customers, shine online, and create life-changing results. It is such an honor to have you here with us, Ellie, all the way from Australia. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that beautiful intro. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited that you're here. Let's dive right into it. We always like to ask, tell us about your upbringing, tell us about your childhood, tell us where it all started and how you what led you to entrepreneurship.
So I grew up in Western Australia, which we were just talking about. And so I'm based in Western Australia. I grew up here. I grew up in a small town that is just south of the capital city over here. And I had a somewhat stereotypical childhood in that I had a very nuclear family upbringing. My childhood was really beautiful. We used to spend a lot of time on the ocean, and I have a brother that I'm really close with. I feel like my childhood's quite boring, to be honest. There's no like big exciting milestones to speak of, but boring in the best possible way, right? So I was always very type A, high achieving. Like I knew that I wanted to do a lot and see a lot and experience a lot. And my childhood into my early 20s was quite linear in terms of I did well at school, and then I studied at university, and then I moved to London and started my career. And I always had in my mind, like, I want to do something in communication, something in messaging and marketing, and really pictured myself being someone who was wearing really high heels and tottering around corporate offices, in a big city somewhere. Like it was that, I guess, that childhood vision of what life could look like. And I got that in my 20s. So I worked in London, then Sydney, and then moved back here to Perth. And during that time, I climbed the corporate ladder, which is a story of so many of us. And then somewhere between starting that climb and getting to where I ultimately wanted to be, which was a head of strategy role, I really, really lost my passion and my drive for what I was doing. I started to really embark on a personal development journey and discover and uncover that I had been living a life that I thought I wanted because of the societal messaging that had been spoon-fed to me throughout my life, which was life's going to be really great for you and you're going to be really happy if you get the amazing job and climb the corporate ladder. And it really just didn't serve me in any way. So I studied coaching a few years before I left my corporate role, which was a really big move for me and a really big part of my journey. And then when I was 27, I started my business on the side while I was still working in corporate. So I was very much doing that dual, like go to work, 60, 70-hour weeks, and then go home, do the business in the evening, which was exhausting, but I was really lit up at the time and inspired. And so it felt really incredible to do. And then slowly transitioned out of that and into my business. And so the model that I started with was one-to-one coaching. And then from there, I moved into the course creation. So I launched my first course about 2 years ago now, which in some ways it feels like it was yesterday. And in other ways, it feels like it was a lifetime ago, because I've done so many launches and run so many programs since then. So that's, I guess, a little bit about the childhood to now story in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think so many people can relate to that. I definitely related to so many moments in your story, talking about, the clicking heels and the corporate ladder. Like I literally, that's the description that I thought of who I was going to be also in my 20s. So I can definitely relate to that. Can you share, so you said you first launched a course about 2 years ago. Can you share your experience of launching your very first course? What that was like? Was it like a huge success, or was there anything that you would go back and change now?
Yeah, I was trying to think about this beforehand because I knew that you would ask me that. And it's actually really beautiful timing, because I'm about to relaunch this first course again for the third time. And as I've been sitting in it again right now, I've kind of been reacquainted with how much I love this program. And I think so much of it is because it was my first. There's always something special about your first, right? So my first course that I launched was called Shine on Social Without Selling Your Soul. And the reason that I launched that program was because, like I mentioned before, I was working one-to-one, and I'd got to a point in my business where I was fully booked to the point of almost running myself ragged. And I could recognize that there was that theme of, okay, you're living your life like you were when you were in corporate, but the only difference now is that you're running your own business. And so I was at that beautiful point where I had the opportunity to scale, and I knew that the way for me to scale was through a course. And so my thinking when I created that first course was, how can I create something that's really going to serve my people? What are the questions that I'm getting asked the most from my people right now? What is it they want to know most about? And being a business coach, what's the way that I built my business that I can then share with them? So sharing it from that place of sharing my own journey as well as the thing I get asked most about. And when I kind of mapped everything out, it came back to, well, it's all about shining and showing up online and on social media, especially in a way where you can truly stand out as you. Because I was having so many conversations about fear of being seen and visibility, something I call visibility mindset, as well as, well, how do I share messages in a way that is unique and where I really stand out and I'm different to everyone else online? And so that was the premise behind the program. And so in terms of the launch, I went into it with both, I think, in hindsight, no expectations and a million expectations, which is quite interesting in itself. I put goals on it. I think from memory, I wanted to have 50 people in that first program. And I think I had 63 people that came into the first round. I really gave it my all. I was working with a coach at the time, and I made sure that I had support because I was still working one-to-one. And so it wasn't an easy time, I'm all for being real here, because I was in scaling mode. So I remember going into it feeling like I'm going to work hard once here so that I can relaunch this again over and over again. So I know that this is going to be a big season, and that's okay, because I'm going to lay this groundwork once and then I'm not going to have to do it again. And so those were the goals. I gave it absolutely everything I had, and we can obviously dive into more of what that looked like in a moment. And it was a really big success. And I think a huge reason for that was, I was creating something that I knew my people really wanted. I'd listened to them for so long. And I knew that, okay, if I just listen to what they need and I literally create that, then that is where my success is going to come from. And I've run my entire business that way. It's like the questions I'm being asked, what is it that you want? I will deliver. I will create that for you, which I think a lot of people can get wrong, because we can look at it from the perspective of, well, what do I want to create? What feels really good for me? If you think about it like a Venn diagram, the sweet spot is that tiny bit in the middle of what you really want and what your ideal client really wants, right? And so I did that really well. And I also made sure that it was the best freaking program on the planet, over and above making sure that my launch was really jazz handsy, which I think is also really important. So obviously, as a marketing and mindset coach, I teach people how to sell the sizzle, but you've got to have the substance behind that. And so I made sure that the program was really, really amazing.
Incredible. That's so cool. So this is the third time that you're going to be relaunching that. Let's go back to the very first time, because I feel like, you know, you had a lot going on. You had your one-on-one coaching. Now it's time to scale. Where does one begin to transition into scaling? What kind of tools, where did you do your research? Did you have a coach that helped you? If you can provide any guidance to somebody who's going into their very first online program and wants to launch.
I think that's a really great question, because what I see is that for many of my clients, when I start working with them, they're coming to work with me at this exact point. And it's a really interesting time. So for so many of us, we do build that traditional business where we're trading time for money. And then we recognize that there's an opportunity to shift that. But that challenge is exactly what you just said there, which is, how do I do that while I'm still trading time for money? And so when you're scaling, the best thing to do is think about, like, scaling is literally tipping the scales, right? Like, you have to choose to tip the scales so that you can then grow. And you're tipping the scales with one of two things: time or money, or both. So what I had to do was go, okay, am I going to sacrifice some of my time, or am I going to sacrifice some of my money to take me to this next level? So what I did was I capped the amount of people that I was working with one-to-one, because I knew that I needed a lot of my time so that I could create the strategy and really understand that course launch process, because obviously it was something I knew I was going to teach as well for years to come. And I also sacrificed, so that was my time, and I also sacrificed money as well, in that I brought on new team members, and I started working with a new coach at that time as well. And I invested quite significantly in a coach. At the time, it was the most money I'd ever spent on anything. And I remember feeling like so much trepidation before I was about to pull the trigger on that investment, but just knowing that, okay, this is something that is just going to pay for itself for so many years to come. And so those were the key things that I did in terms of that time and money. And then from there, I really committed to it. So I had a conversation with my now fiance and was like, look, the next few months, I'm going all in on this, because essentially what I'm doing is changing my business model. And that requires time and energy and effort. And so I then got really clear on what my launch plan looked like. So when I launch, and when I teach my clients to launch, the biggest thing for me is the pre-launch. And this is where a lot of people go really wrong, is that it's really easy to create an incredible program and then be so excited by that program that you've created that you just want to get it straight out into the world, right? Whereas the best possible thing you can do is to really warm up your audience, serve your community really, really well, and then seed in that content, seed in what it is that's coming, so that by the time you do release it, they are so freaking excited about that thing. It's like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this thing, because you've taken that time to really nurture them and warm them up and support them to get to that point. And so I spent a lot of time pre-launching. I started by releasing, gosh, this is really taking me back. I started by releasing a hashtags guide initially. It was, I think it was something like the 60 best hashtags for coaches, creatives, and consultants. And I've still got that hashtags guide somewhere. And that went really well. I had I think from memory, about 400 or 500 people download that straight out of the gate, which was awesome for me. Those were really great numbers for me at that time. And then from there, I launched another freebie, which was a freebie around how to show up on live video, which surprisingly didn't do as well as that first one did. It was a short video, and I think it was just less tangible. It was like, cool, these are tips that you might kind of come back to at some point, or you might get anywhere. That hashtag guide was like super tangible. It was like, you can copy and paste this. And then the third thing I did was something called the Shine on Social Challenge. So I always recommend that the last piece of pre-launch activity that you do be something where people can be with you live, if it's a live launch, which I always recommend your first launch is a live launch, because then you can test the market, you can really see what works and what doesn't work, and then build on that for the next time. So I always recommend doing something live with your people. So that Shine on Social Challenge was a way for me to be live with my people over 4 days, share with them incredible value, create something where they could learn and grow. And I had people during that week who were like, oh my God, I just won my first client on Instagram. I just shared my story for the first time, and I've had all these people that I didn't even know were there engage and show up, and all of these amazing results. And so it was very much that, okay, if this is what happens for you in 4 days of committing to something for free, can you imagine what's going to happen to you in 4 weeks where you've invested in this program? And that was really my opportunity to then sell in the course. So that pre-launch activity in a nutshell was really what led to the success of the program, as well as me being really all in and having both a coach and a team to support me.
Let's dive into this pre-launch strategy a little bit further. You gave us so much already. Thank you so much for being so generous.
It's a pleasure.
But I'm curious, how long would you say that pre-launch strategy actually is? So like, are we looking at 2 to 3 months, or are we looking at 2 to 3 weeks? Like, how long are you nurturing, giving all those freebies so that you can finally drop your product?
That's a really hard question to answer, because it depends on so many factors. So I'll share what some of those factors are so you can start to gauge what it might look like for you, for example. So when I work with my clients, what we're trying to determine is how many people do they currently have on their email list, which is the biggest asset in your business if you're an online business owner, right? It's like the infrastructure. So I always joke about how as online business owners, we don't pay rent, we don't pay for any physical infrastructure. So our asset, our main infrastructure is that email list. So it's how big is your current email list? How big is your current community? How engaged are those people? When you think about your super fans, the people that are there in your corner, cheering you on, always waiting for the next thing to drop, how many of those do you have? And wherever you're at on your journey, it's going to be really different, right? So obviously, I started once at a place where I had no super fans, no list, none of those things. And so if I was going into my business now and I just was going to have course creation as my model, I would probably create a really strategic pre-launch of maybe 6 months, which was just so much free value, so much amazing content, focusing specifically on building that community and building that list. Whereas nowadays, my pre-launch might even just be 5 days. So it really depends on email size, how many super fans you have, and the size of your community. And when I say community, in addition to email list, I'm talking about like your social media community as well. So I know that that's not really helpful because it's not very specific, but it does essentially really vary. So I'll give you some more examples. I've got a client recently who she generated a really amazing 6-figure launch from a mastermind, and she did that with a 4-week pre-launch. It was the first premium offer she'd done, but she had launched a range of lower priced courses before that. I had someone else who just launched their first course, and they reached their launch goal for that, which was amazing. And they did a pre-launch of, I think it was 6 weeks in total. And the other thing with that is that so much of it is also in the prep, right? So you're going all in on that final bit at the end, but really you're doing like a walkthrough right up until you're pre-launching. So there's like the pre-launch, which is really nurturing your peeps and looking after them. And then there's that pre-launch of, okay, what's the thing I'm doing that's very specifically about the program, that's designed to let people know that something's coming and tease them into this program, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that you answered it quite well, actually, even in your first answer, because what I heard and what you were saying is that it really depends on where you are in your business in regards to your community. And it's like, if you're working with zero community, it's kind of a longer strategy. If you've already got a foundation, then it could be a shorter strategy. So absolutely. Thank you so much for clearing that up for us.
My pleasure.
Yasmin, I know she was scribbling some stuff down, so I know you have a question. I have so many, so I'm going to throw it to Yasmin for a second.
I have a lot of questions too, but I want to go back to a couple of, you mentioned the freebies. So having something like a tangible guide, something that you can give away, there's just a lot of value. Would you say in the beginning, when let's say you started from a zero superfan followership, were those freebies what was allowing you to build that email list of yours?
Absolutely. So I call them funnel friendly freebies, which is like a total tongue twister. Don't try and say it too quickly. I can barely say it once. But essentially what you want to create are freebies where you start with the end in mind. So when I say start with the end in mind, I mean knowing what it is that you're wanting to sell ultimately. So what is the program or the course or the one-to-one services that I specifically want to sell? And then when you know that, you can walk backwards. So I like to do this through a problem solution model. So the process that you're taking your peeps through, it's like, there's a problem, you provide a solution, which leads to another problem, which leads to another solution. And so you're walking your people through this model. So for example, with Shine on Social, without selling your soul, it was like, okay, so the ultimate solution that the course provides is that I'm taking them through this incredible program, which will teach them how to build community, connect with their community, call in their dream clients, and ultimately build a business that they absolutely love, right? So that's the ultimate solution. So walking back from that, I started with first problem being, well, how do I just get some quick wins on social media? Like, what can I do today that's going to give me like maybe more likes on a post than I had previously, or more comments on a post? And this was a couple of years back. I wouldn't necessarily launch a freebie like that now because hashtags are much less the answer than they used to be. But at the time, hashtags were really big and everyone was like, how do I use these properly? So that was the first solution, which led to the next problem of, okay, well, I want to do more diverse content. How do I show up on video? Which led to the next problem of, okay, how do I kind of piece this all together and get more confident around this and build a mindset of, yes, I can totally show up and be more visible, which led to that. So start with creating a freebie that is your ideal client, wherever they're at right in this moment. What's a really, really quick win freebie, a really quick win freebie that is going to ultimately be funnel friendly to take them through to the ultimate course or program at the end.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. That is such a great visual. Like, even in you just talking about it, it's such a great visual of how to structure your offers and your freebies at the same time.
Totally.
So this question, I think it's more of like a selfish question, just because you know where we are in our process, which is we've wrapped up a course without testing it in the market, and now we're like, what are we doing? And so we are personally grappling, as I'm sure a lot of people have made this mistake as well. Should we do some advertising to try to get this product out there? Would you recommend that for anyone who literally has zero followers, zero community, zero everything, and has made the mistake of creating the product first without testing the market?
So I view advertising as an amplification tool, right? So it's essentially amplifying whatever it is that already exists. And so I'm always really hesitant to use any kind of advertising unless you know that it works first. And I know that this can feel a little bit chicken and egg and be a little bit frustrating. But ultimately, the reason that I say that is because otherwise it's very easy to just start spending so much money on advertising when you might be able to refine or make a few tweaks first before you go and do that. So if you've got your product there already, what I would probably do is go, okay, how can I create a pilot round of this with a limited number of people to get really clear on what works and what doesn't with this program and exactly who it's for? In the interim, building community around that, so that once I've got that feedback and I've refined the product and I've refined how I market it, I can then use advertising in a way where I know I've given myself every chance of succeeding with those ads. Because what happens so often is if you use ads without testing those things first, and you're both smart marketers, so I'm sure you wouldn't think in this way, but if you don't have the experience with ads, it's so easy to go, ads just do not work for me. Like, I tried ads and they just don't work for me. And you would both know that advertising is amazing, right? Like, social ads are just so incredible, and have been such a big part of my strategy. But I'm a really big believer in community first, solution first, and using ads as an amplification tool rather than the initial solution to build community and sell your programs.
Perfect, which is why people should test the market before they make a product, as we have learned.
It's okay. It's not too late. Pilot rounds, test now.
Yeah, we can rectify.
You can.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier. You help your clients sort of create the sizzle around the product, and but it has substance. You can back it up. It's a great product. A lot of the gurus out there, and I'll mention somebody that I'm sure we can all quote, but they say things like take massive imperfect action. Is that a different message than what you're saying? Are you saying don't necessarily take massive imperfect action, make sure that there is that glamour and that sizzle up front, but also do the work on the back end, versus sort of like what that message is telling me is just jump in, make a course, even if it's not perfect?
Yeah, totally. So I really agree with that messaging of take imperfect action. So what I mean by making sure that it's full of substance is not that, I don't mean your video has to be high definition, incredible TV quality, or that everything needs to be set up so that it is just wildly incredible design and all of those things. What I mean is that the course itself, the content itself, you know that you're sharing information that works. You know that you're sharing information that either you've used yourself to generate a result or you've shared previously with clients. And I think, I'm always hesitant about having these conversations because I never want to shit talk the industry. But what I have seen is there's just too many times where clients have come to me and they've said, I did this course or I worked with this person, and there was just nothing in the program. Like I bought the thing and I was expecting X and it didn't deliver on that. And what I know to be true, because my programs now, like you won't see any professional video in my programs. I DIY'd my design for many years. I'm literally only now redoing my website after 3 years because I just haven't had time because I've been too busy making money, and I'm okay with that, right? And so unashamedly okay with that. And so, but my courses have substance. Like what I'm teaching, the content that I'm teaching, I know works because I've used it myself. I've taught it to clients. And so that word sizzle, essentially when I say like sell the sizzle, make sure that it's of substance, I'm really talking about the content itself. Make sure that the information that's included is completely of substance. I'm such a big fan of taking imperfect action, making sure it's like 80% ready. But I would never scrimp on the content itself. Like make sure what you're sharing is a step-by-step process that people can follow and information that's really going to make an impact.
That's so important. Always bringing value to the table. Everything that you do is purposeful with value. And again, I love the idea of it being transformational for somebody else in somebody else's life. So that's incredible. I want to touch up on, how do you value what you have to bring to the table? Obviously, in the beginning, a lot of people, they might have incredible courses, incredible information that they're packaging together, but they have no idea how to value, what kind of value to put on that course. And also because they may not have the credibility, maybe they don't have as much of a followership, they don't have the confidence to put the right price tag on what they're offering. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so pricing is a big conversation, right? And if anyone is listening who's in that, it's very real, especially at the start when you say you don't necessarily have the community there yet, all of those things. There is no one size fits all strategy as to how to do this, which is why it's so tricky. So the place that I like to start with is, first of all, and people will tell you different things. Some people will say just go straight out and research other programs. The first thing I like to do is to sit with, well, what do I feel this program is worth? Like, thinking about what I've put into this, what do I feel this program is worth? Because when you really sit with that and you remove all that inner critic talk and you don't go and assess with anything else, what I tend to find is that my clients price themselves in a way that is most true for them. And so it might be that they're like, well, this is a $999 program, or this is a $4,000 program. Whereas if they started looking at in the market, they'd be like, oh, I can see really quickly that I'm really small over here and I'm going to price this at $199. So I always like to start there, like start from within first. What feels right for you before you go outward? Once you've done that, write down that figure, then do some research. Do some research from very much a research perspective, removing any comparisonitis, knowing that there is 100% enough for everyone, and look for 3 similar programs. So 3 programs that might be similar in nature, that have different value propositions, so different things that make them unique, essentially, and look at the pricing on those, and then price yourself at the higher end of those 3. And this is no matter where you're at in your business, right? And then look at those 2 figures and work out what feels good based on those. So this is like a quickie strategy for if you're DIYing. I would do that, because I don't believe that just because you're starting out, you should be pricing yourself low. Because what happens when you do that is you start to put yourself in that race of, I am always racing against cost, whereas you want to be racing against value. So you want people to go, oh, okay, this course is this amount, but these 2 incredible women have worked with brands like Samsung and done amazing work in the world. Like, of course I would work with them. And for someone else, like, they're obviously bringing their own experience to the table, so for whatever course you're creating, don't go, I'm new in business, I can't price it at this, but rather go, what is the value that I've created here? And therefore, what am I going to price it at based on that? Does that help?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that really helps. And then when I think about the product that we've created, and Yasmin and I have had this conversation go back and forth so many times, where we talk about, it's worth so much. We've put 2 months of work into this. We can't price it at such a low price because we've put so much hard work into it. But then, you get confronted by the Udemys of the world, right? And I kind of want to talk about Udemy in general, because Udemy's amazing in one sense, that it's like this search engine for course creators to get their face out there, to get a following, but it devalues so much of the content that's out there by putting it on sale. What are your thoughts about Udemy and using Udemy as a tool to get out there?
And I want to add, it doesn't have to just be Udemy. There's so many platforms out there. Yeah.
Don't use any of them.
Yeah.
Don't use
Great
any
tip.
of them.
And I want to know why. Tell us why.
So exactly what you said before, you're going into a cost market, right? If you do that, it becomes about how can I get the cheapest program? Whereas, so when you're building a business and you're selling courses and you're building any kind of business that is based around personal brand, so you're a coach, creative consultant, a teacher of some kind, right? The big trend, and this has been a trend for years now in the industry, and it's not going away, is that people are buying you. People aren't buying just from you, but they're buying you. They're buying the person that you represent, the lifestyle that you represent. They're buying a part of you that they want. They might even want to just like really be your friend or get to know you, or, like they're literally buying you. And I have mixed personal feelings around this because, I guess the educated woman in me could be like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, that's just crazy. I want them to be buying my work. But what I think that does say, like, we can use that to our advantage in that if we create a standalone brand, then we have the opportunity to value that as part of what it is that we're selling. Whereas if we use programs like Udemy or whatever, we've got people who are just looking for one specific thing. So I want to learn how to create, amazing 30-second video. They're literally just going to look for the course on that. Whereas you're selling the whole package of you, your experience, your knowledge, your product. Like, there's so much more that you're selling as part of that. You're selling the full experience. And so people are going to value that more when you invest in your brand, your community, creating and building up all of those things, your podcast, and then selling your program through your networks, rather than getting into that melting pot of price and people who are just looking for quick wins.
Absolutely. Thank you for that distinction, because I think in our gut, we felt that and knew that, and we were just flipping back and forth between, we need to create, a whole sales funnel and talk to our community and do all that, or let's just launch on Udemy because we just need to test this product that we've created. So I feel like what you've just said really inspired me to stick to our guns and try to create a community around what we've done, instead of just throw it into the marketplace that is the Udemys of the world.
And I don't.
Go, please.
Sorry,
go ahead,
I was just
Ellie.
going to say, I don't think that you're going to get the right test results if you were to test through Udemy or similar, because you're going to be testing from people who, like, when I think about the psychographics of that person, they are wanting that quick win. They're in marketplace mode. Like, you go to Udemy because you're like, cool, I want to learn X or I want to learn Y. Unless that's the person that you want, and therefore you need to craft your pricing and your content to that, I would think that you want someone who's making more of an informed buying decision, because it's those people who are going to be more willing to invest if they're making that informed decision. So I think you're going to get better results if you create your own community and you build your own brand in that way as well.
Yeah, I think we're really promoting lifelong super fans and lifelong communities who are going to be there to support. And it's also, you create a lot more abundance as well when you have that community, because then you're listening to them. So you're able to provide them with other, whatever it may be, programs that you can help them with. So that's amazing. Exactly. It's really amazing. So let's talk about the little bit of a tech overwhelm that a lot of new online course creators feel when they are starting to launch. Tell us about your journey in the very beginning and how comfortable you've become over time.
Oh my God, I hate tech. I hate tech so much. So it's real. And I think that, like, there's so many emotions that come up with launch. Like, I talk about launch mindset so much with my clients, and I've started to recognize all sorts of amazing things that happen on like day 1 and day 3 of Cut Open and all these things. It's really fascinating. But tech has such a huge role in launch mindset and just making people freak the fuck out, basically, because it feels like it's there to just derail everything. And so the first thing that I did for my first program was make sure I had someone on my team who knew how to fix those things, because I don't know how to do that stuff. Someone who knew how to do like quick wins. And that person for the first course, she was on a different time zone to me. Actually, no, she wasn't at that time. She was on the same time zone. It was later I had someone on a different time zone, and that didn't work so well. So make sure they're on the same time zone to you, and that you've got someone there who can handle those like quick tech wins. What some of my clients do, and there's a lot of people out there who will do this with you, is you can buy from IT specialists and like tech specialists like a 5-hour package of almost like crisis hours. So if you're in a cart open period for a launch, for example, and you're like, oh my God, something's happening, I need support really quickly, you've pre-bought those hours for them to come on and help you like drop everything and come and support you really quickly. And you do need someone who can do that for you, because as we know, things happen. Like there's always going to be some kind of tech thing that comes up. I think from a mindset perspective, knowing that it's just part of the launch process and it will happen at some point, it's kind of not a case of if but when, and that's okay. It is what it is. You know, I've had webinars completely crash. I've had live videos where like the audio has just been horrendous. I've gone on and like the comments don't appear. I've had sales pages crash. I've had payment methods that we've tested 10 times and then for whatever reason don't work. I've had everything. And I think that like anything in life, you can approach it in two ways. You can go, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. My launch is over and therefore my business is over and therefore my life is over. Or you can go, this just happens and let's fix it as quickly as we can. And it might have impacted sales. You know, the worst tech thing I had, actually, I once had, the funnel was set up where, like, you know how someone buys a product and then they naturally go into the like course participant funnel, like you can set that up in the back end. I had it so that instead of it being when they purchased, they went into that. If they clicked through to the sales page, it was somebody in my team had set it up so that if they clicked through to the sales page, it marked them as you bought the course, and they then got like the first couple of emails of the course and access to the program. Thankfully, it happened. I think there were like 7 people that happened to, and then a beautiful client reached out and was like, oh my God, I just got access to this course. I didn't buy it. I'm really worried that this is happening. So all sorts of things happen, right? And so really just approaching it from the perspective of this is going to happen. It's going to be okay. Know that it will happen, and also just prepare as much as you can. So have someone on your team who is tech savvy, especially if you're not.
Very, very good tips and advice. And hey, listen, life happens, tech issues happen. You live and you learn, and it's great to have somebody on your team who can pinpoint that and help you out right away. So
Definitely.
Note taken. A couple of questions came to mind, and I feel like we can talk about so many different things right now. But let's talk about your live launch approach and why it is that you choose that versus other launch strategies.
So my business is still reasonably young. So I've only had my business for about 3 years now, and it's grown quite quickly. And so, but it's still young, right? It's 3 years. And the way that I built it was the first year was basically all one-to-one work. Then I transitioned into courses. My main model now is that I run masterminds twice a year, the Swift Marketing Mastermind twice a year. And then from there, my clients have the option to join me. Well, it's capped, but I have a small group called the Swift Inner Circle, which is my most premium group offer. So those 2 group programs are multi-6-figure programs in themselves. And then any courses that I run are just on top of that. So for me, when I set up the business, I focused on one-to-one, quickly transitioned, then focused on the group programs. And now my focus is going to be those additional courses that I've run a couple of times live. I'm now going to switch them to a passive cycle. So the reason I've done it in this way is because, like I said before, I'm a huge, huge fan of launching first. So even if you're going to run something in a passive model, which I think is also really awesome, I would always launch it first, because for that same reason that when we were talking about Facebook advertising before, unless you've launched it first, you don't know necessarily whether it's going to meet market needs. You don't know how successful it's going to be. And when you're in the energy of the launch, it's basically an opportunity for you to just get so much information and so much feedback that will then support you to go, okay, I've got all this information, I can create that passive funnel. Because I think there's a little bit of a misconception around passive, like the passive model, that it's really easy and there's not a lot of work involved. And my entire business model is really easeful now, and I'm a big fan of creating a really easy business. But it's just like you work hard once when you're creating that passive funnel, right? Like you do have to create that, and you want to ensure that you're creating it with some backing and some research where you know that passive funnel is going to work. So when you do a live launch, you get enough information to know that it's really going to work for you specifically. So that's always my recommendation. In terms of my launching now, when I launch the masterminds, I'm selling them for over about a 3-month period, because most of the time they're selling out well in advance, which is amazing. And those launches have become the easiest things in the world. It's harder to sell a $99 product than it is to sell a mastermind at this point, which is fascinating in itself. And so the live launching for me now feels really quite easy and effortless. And so that's essentially why I've done that. So I'm a really big fan of live launching if you know how to live launch well. And I'm also a really big fan of passive setups. I also think that passive setups work really, really well in slightly later stages of business. And when I say later stages of business, it could be 6 months into your business if you are setting it up in that way. But just knowing that you've set it up in a way where you're live launching it first, you've got those results, then you're switching it.
So just to be clear, when you say live launches, every time you say live launch, I'm thinking live webinar.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean, or did you mean like that week where you drop like your 3 freebies that all lead to that webinar, then you're on that live webinar and you ask people to sign up?
Yeah, so a live launch basically means that there is a distinct cart open and cart close. So there's a limited amount of time live for someone to purchase that thing. So say they can only purchase it from the 9th of July through to the 20th of July, 2020. So that's a live launch, whereas a evergreen launch is one where people can purchase at any time. So they might still go into a funnel where there are a series of bonuses over 10 days that disappear over those 10 days before they can then purchase it at that, amazing price. But it's still something where they're going into that funnel at any time. So it's operating on an evergreen cycle. So live launch is essentially, there's a specific cart open date and a specific cart close date.
So, and then when you say you can gather so much feedback during a live launch, are we talking about feedback from your sales strategy where you can see what works and what doesn't work, or feedback from the actual product that you're trying to sell?
Both, all of the above. So you're getting feedback because you're in the experience of that pre-launch. So you can work out, does my pre-launch work? Am I able to funnel people through? What's the show up rate? Like, you're getting DMs potentially of people who are really excited. You're getting that moment to moment feedback, as well as if you're providing the product and you run it for say 4 weeks live, you then have the option to get testimonial feedback at the end of that. So if you start running something on a passive evergreen cycle, it's much harder to get that initial feedback in the first instance because course completion rates are unfortunately really low in our industry. So the last time I checked, it was only 2%. Wow. And so it's much harder to get that feedback. Whereas if you run something live, course completion rates go up massively, and you've got more chance of somebody completing that program with you, providing that feedback, which will then support you, in terms of your product creation and anything you might need to tweak, and also in terms of your credibility of selling it again on that passive model, because you've got those testimonials.
Amazing. Thank you so much for clearing that up. You've been so
Such a pleasure.
Generous. Yeah, you've been so generous. Yeah, it's been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much, and I've been jotting down notes. I don't know if you've seen, but Yasmin and I have been taking a lot of notes in this amazing discussion. I feel like we could talk to you forever. Yasmin, did you have any questions before I asked the very last question?
I just want one more question, because I'm being conscious of time as well.
Yeah.
But again, when going back to tech conversation of things, top 3 or 5 tools that we absolutely need that you would recommend that you've used to set up our funnels. Like, it could be like ClickFunnels, ConvertKit. Just tell us your top tools.
Your automation tools.
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm like the most annoying person when it comes to tools, because I just think that there's so many great tools. And so don't you, just because these are the ones I use, don't use them as like the be all and end all, right? I spent so much time thinking that my perfect launch of my perfect business depended on perfect tools. And then I realized that the tools are just like 5% of everything, So tools that I do love, we use ConvertKit in our business, and we really, really love it. We have used Samcart for a long time as our payment method tool, which we've really loved. We're switching to Thrivecart just because it makes more sense with some of the automations that we're running, and we're really happy with that so far. We've recently, and we haven't done it on the front end yet, but in the back end, we've switched over to Kajabi, which we're really, really happy about. It's proving to be excellent so far. We've had a lot of crappy experiences with the tool that we were using before that. I won't go into it, but if you've done any of my courses, you will know what it is. So Kajabi has been wonderful so far in terms of that front end course experience. What else do we absolutely love? In the business, we live in Asana. So my team and I are in Asana together every single day. We run all of our launch boards, all of the behind the scenes we do in Asana. We use Planoly as our scheduling tool for all our organic content. Those would be the main ones.
Amazing.
Awesome.
And your email marketing automation, is that through Kajabi?
We use ConvertKit for that.
Oh, sorry. But you can do Kajabi for emails as well, right?
You can. Our preference is ConvertKit, and so we hook up ConvertKit and Kajabi. So Kajabi is used for it's used as the membership platform for courses, and then ConvertKit is the email provider software.
Got it.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so helpful. We always ask that question because everybody kind of answers that differently. And
totally.
It's interesting to see what people's preferences are for whatever reason, right? So, because at the end of the day, all of these automation tools do very similar things.
They do. And do you know what, actually, I just a tip on that is that use the tools that your team love. Like, I don't want to be doing that work day to day because it's not my role within the business. And so I defer to Nivek, who's my business manager. And I'm like, what do you want to use? Like, what do you love? Tell me what works for you, because if it works for her, it works for me.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip. Thank you. So again, thank you so much. You've been such a pleasure to talk to. I feel like we definitely need to have you back on again because you've just shared so much. You've been so generous. And I know I've learned a lot. I know the people listening have learned a lot. And before we wrap everything up, we always ask our guests to share one last wisdom bomb with us. So if you had to share one last wisdom bomb with our listeners, what would it be?
I would say that the only thing that's more important than strategy when you are creating a course and launching a course or building a business is your mindset. And so spend as much, if not more time, creating a mindset, cultivating a mindset for success. So that might be any tools or practices, whether it's meditation, journaling, whatever it is that allows you to really be the best CEO that you can be, handle and move through challenges with ease and grace, and be able to deeply come back to that epic self-trust that you need when you're growing a business. So really focus on mindset work, because when you do that, that is like the secret ingredient to building a really successful business and course.
Love
Amazing.
that. Thank you. That's amazing.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Well, that really wraps it up. Again, thank you so much for coming on as a guest, and we'll make sure to drop all of the links to your social, your Instagram, and your mastermind into the show notes. But if there's anywhere else that people can find you, can you share with us where they can find you?
Absolutely. So I love a chat. Come on over and send me an Instagram DM. I am at Ellie H Swift. There's a sneaky H in the middle there. You can also find me over at ellieswift.com. And I am very soon to be launching a podcast as well, which is called Shine Online with Ellie Swift. So come on over and join me there. It's going to be amazing. I've just started recording the episodes, and yeah, it's going to be great.
Oh, we're going to tune in for sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Congrats on that launch too. That's really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. It's going to be really fun.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Course Creation Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being a champion of ours. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe and find us on Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. We really want to hear from you, and we're going to be digging through reviews for our next guest to feature. So if you're interested in being a guest, then you know what to do. Also, join our private Facebook community called the Course Creation Crew to connect with other course creators. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at coursecreation.com. That is all. We appreciate you all so much and look forward to having you here next time.